All right, so it's gonna be a clip play. Basically, it's Sheryl Sandberg, a Facebook CEO, the feminist who pretty much said that the females' lack of ambition is what's holding them back, not necessarily discrimination. And I guess this is her rant on, trying to convince women to choose. Not only convince women, but basically you got to convince men to want to be house husbands, because the reality is the women will not be able to achieve this thing if they have children and husbands. So you basically have to redefine the roles. And I'm gonna read something part of it real quick. But if you gotta look at this dynamic though, like you have a segment of society saying that men aren't stepping up to the plate doing X, Y, Z, blah, right? So then you have feminists saying like, no, we don't need men to do that. Those traditional roles, that ideology is antiquated, and we need to move beyond that, because of course they need to move beyond that in order for half the population to be female CEOs, right? So, but we know common sense wise that a lot of women in that predicament, they end up resenting their husbands, okay, and they end up in divorce. NPR put on the Facebook page the question we want to hear from the female breadwinners and how that goes. Got a lot of feedback, a lot of comments. It's way too many to even read off the responses, but basically you had to divide. You had the women who were talking about how their husbands took lesser jobs, worked part-time, and let them go out and be the man, right? Then you have the other aspect of women being honest, saying we did the same thing, but we ended up in divorce because it didn't work out. She lost respect for him, or he felt some type of way not being able to be the provider, what have you. So what she's feminists like Sheryl Sandberg are advocating and what they want is pretty bad in the long run. If the fix of the nuclear family is the key to building a stronger community, stronger society, what she's advocating is going to destroy that. So I'm just read something real quick on what she. The reasoning behind this whole nonsense is she starts off with talking about in her new book, she breaks down the anecdotes to back up the premise of why women don't lead, and she also talks about why there are fewer female leaders than men. She breaks down the reality that in the Fortune 500, only 21 female are the CEOs. Just a quick question: in those Fortune 500, how many of those companies were started by females? Name how many females invented a patent in the last 10 years that did anything. Like, that's just a side note question for me. But moving on, Sandberg is among the 14% of women who hold executive positions and the 16% of women who hold board director seats, according to the Catalyst.org. For minority women, and the numbers are even bleaker, women of color, she writes, just hold 4% of corporate jobs and 3% of state boards. But they doing so much better than we are, though. Never mind. Truly equality would be a world where half the countries, see, this is not just an American thing. They need to go across the board in every country, but half the countries and half the companies, men run half the homes. Just to repeat that again. It says a true equal world would be one where women ran half our countries and companies. Oh, I didn't even get that. And men ran half the homes. So therein lies the issue. What she's saying is that they want more women in power. They want more house husbands, more men who get looked upon negative already for being in that situation. They want that dynamic to grow more, and that doesn't really work, because we know in reality a lot of women end up resenting their husbands. They don't want to, like the chick Eleanor said in my video, if you lose your job, you lose your respect. She straight up told that man on national TV she didn't respect him and he needed to get a job. So what these feminists are trying to constantly convince men, oh, it's okay to stay at home and let your wife provide for you. It's okay. Most men, it's not a pride thing. It's not an issue thing. It's a desire that a dude has. It's a virtue of value that he picked up. He's a worker. He wants to do that. He doesn't want to sit at home and change diapers. And this is what feminists are arguing that men need to step up to do. Not step up and be protectors and providers and lead their wives and families. Nah, they don't want them doing that, because that's interfering with female success across the board. But basically, a truly equal world would have to be half of everything being female, because they're half the population. The problem is that females aren't necessarily trying to get these jobs. They're not trying to be CEOs and own all these companies. They want to be mothers and wives and sit at home and retire and, watch their grandchildren get old. They don't want to do what these chicks are doing. Yet they're silly, and many of them are being manipulated or kind of bullied into doing something that biologically they don't even want to do. But just listen to the whole video of her going around on why, or her pep rally moment of to get these females more motivated to do something that they're not actually interested in doing. It's quite silly. The obvious solution to this reality would be to get older women who are past the ages of having children or doing that. This is the whole concept of, like, say a guy and a wife, they're married. She's raising the kids the whole time. The kids get to high school. Now she's got all the time in her hand. Then she goes back to school. Then she gets a job. That makes perfect sense. That's not an issue, right? The kids are out of the house. But we do know that a lot of those women, when they get that economic power, when they get a little bit of degree, they end up leaving their husbands too. Either way, we're screwed. But just check out the video and listen to it.
Many of us in this room today, let's start out by admitting we're lucky. We don't live in the world our mothers lived in, our grandmothers lived in, where career choices for women were so limited. And if you're in this room today, most of us grew up in a world where we have basic civil rights. And amazingly, we still live in a world where some women don't have them. But all that aside, we still have a problem, and it's a real problem. And the problem is this: women are not making it to the top of any profession anywhere in the world. The numbers tell the story quite clearly. 190 heads of state, 9 are women. Of all the people in parliament in the world, 13% are women. In the corporate sector, women at the top, C-level jobs, board seats, tops out at 16%. The numbers have not moved since 2002 and are going in the wrong direction. And even in the nonprofit world, a world we sometimes think of as being led by more women, women at the top, 20%. We also have another problem, which is that women face harder choices between professional success and personal fulfillment. A recent study in the US showed that of senior managers, of married senior managers, 2/3 of the married men had children, and only 1/3 of the married women had children. A couple of years ago, I was in New York, and I was pitching a deal, and I was in one of those fancy New York private equity offices you can picture. And I'm in the meeting. It's about a 3-hour meeting. And 2 hours in, there's kind of needs to be that bio break, and everyone stands up. And the partner running the meeting starts looking really embarrassed. And I realize he doesn't know where the women's room is in his office. So I start looking around for moving boxes, figuring they just moved in, but I don't see any. And so I said, "So did you just move into this office?" And he said, "No, we've been here about a year." And I said, "Are you telling me that I'm the only woman to have pitched a deal in this office in a year?" And he looked at me and he said, "Yeah, or maybe you're the only one who had to go to the bathroom." So the question is, how are we going to fix this? How do we change these numbers at the top? How do we make this different? I want to start out by saying I talk about this, about keeping women in the workforce, because I really think that's the answer. In the high-income part of our workforce, in the people who end up at the top Fortune 500 CEO jobs or the equivalent in other industries, the problem, I am convinced, is that women are dropping out. Now, people talk about this a lot, and they talk about things like flex time and mentoring and programs companies should have to train women. I want to talk about none of that today, even though that's all really important. Today I want to focus on what we can do as individuals. What are the messages we need to tell ourselves? What are the messages we tell the women that work with and for us? What are the messages we tell our daughters? Now, at the outset, I want to be very clear that this speech comes with no judgments. I don't have the right answer. I don't even have it for myself. I left San Francisco, where I live, on Monday, and I was getting on the plane for this conference, and my daughter, who's 3, when I dropped her off at preschool, did that whole hugging the leg, crying, "Mommy, don't get on the plane" thing. This is hard. I feel guilty sometimes. I know no women, whether they're at home or whether they're in the workforce, that don't feel that sometimes. So I'm not saying that staying in the workforce is the right thing for everyone. My talk today is about what the messages are if you do want to stay in the workforce. And I think there are 3. 1, sit at the table. 2, make your partner a real partner. And 3, look at that, don't leave before you leave. Number 1, sit at the table. Just a couple weeks ago at Facebook, we hosted a very senior government official, and he came in to meet with senior execs from around Silicon Valley. And everyone kind of sat at the table. And then he had these two women who were traveling with him who were pretty senior in his department. And I kind of said to them, sit at the table. Come on, sit at the table. And they sat on the side of the room. When I was in college, my senior year, I took a course called European Intellectual History. Don't you love that kind of thing from college? Wish I could do that now. And I took it with my roommate, Carrie, who was then a brilliant literary student and went on to be a brilliant literary scholar. And my brother, smart guy, but a water polo playing pre-med who was a sophomore. The three of us take this class together. And then Carrie reads all the books in the original Greek and Latin, goes to all the lectures. I read all the books in English and go to most of the lectures. My brother is kind of busy. He reads one book of 12 and goes to a couple of lectures, marches himself up to our room a couple days before the exam to get himself tutored. The three of us go to the exam together, and we sit down, and we study, sit there for 3 hours in our little blue notebooks. Yes, I'm that old. And we walk out, and we look at each other, and we say, how'd you do? And Carrie says, boy, I feel like I didn't really draw out the main point on the Hegelian dialectic. And I say, God, I really wish I had really connected John Locke's theory of property, the philosophers that follow. And my brother says, I got the top grade in the class. You got the top grade in the class? You don't know anything. The problem with these stories is that they show what the data shows. Women systematically underestimate their own abilities. If you test men and women and you ask them questions on totally objective criteria like GPAs, men get it wrong slightly high and women get it wrong slightly low. Women do not negotiate for themselves in the workforce. A study in the last 2 years of people entering the workforce out of college showed that 57% of boys entering, or men I guess, are negotiating their first salary, and only 7% of women. And most importantly, men attribute their success to themselves and women attribute it to other external factors. If you ask men why they did a good job, they'll say, I'm awesome. If you ask, obviously, why are you even asking? If you ask women why they did a good job, what they'll say is someone helped them, they got lucky, they worked really hard. Why does this matter? Boy, it matters a lot, because no one gets to the corner office by sitting on the side, not at the table. And no one gets the promotion if they don't think they deserve their success or they don't even understand their own success. I wish the answer were easy. I wish I could just go tell all the young women I work for, all these fabulous women, believe in yourself, negotiate for yourself, own your own success. I wish I could tell that to my daughter. But it's not that simple, because what the data shows above all else is one thing, which is that success and likability are positively correlated for men and negatively correlated for women. And everyone's nodding because we all know this to be true. There's a really good study that shows this really well. There's a famous Harvard Business School study on a woman named Heidi Roizen, and she's an operator in a in a company in Silicon Valley, and she uses her contacts to become a very successful venture capitalist. In 2002, not so long ago, a professor who was then at Columbia University took that case and made it Heidi Roizen. And he gave that case out, both of them, to 2 groups of students. He changed exactly one word, Heidi to Howard, but that one word made a really big difference. He then surveyed the students, and the good news was the students, both men and women, thought Heidi and Howard were equally competent, and that's good. The bad news was that everyone liked Howard. He's a great guy. You want to work for him. You want to spend the day fishing with him. But Heidi, not so sure. She's a little out for herself. She's a little political. You're not sure you'd want to work for her. This is the complication. We have to tell our daughter and our colleagues, we have to tell ourselves to believe we got the A, to reach for the promotion, to sit at the table. And we have to do it in a world where for them there are sacrifices they will make for that, even though for their brothers there will not. The saddest thing about all of this is that it's really hard to remember this, and I'm about to tell a story which is truly embarrassing for me, but I think important. I gave this talk at Facebook not so long ago to about 100 employees. And a couple hours later, there was a young woman who works there sitting kind of outside my little desk, and she wanted to talk to me. And I said, okay, and she sat down and we talked, and she said, I learned something today. I learned that I need to keep my hand up. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, you're giving this talk, and then you said you're going to take 2 more questions, and I had my hand up with lots of other people, and then you took 2 more questions, and I put my hand down, and I noticed all the women put their hand down, and then you took more questions, only from the men. And I thought to myself, wow, if it's me, who cares about this obviously, giving this talk, during this talk, I can't even notice that the men's hands are still raised and the women's hands are still raised. How good are we as managers of our companies and our organizations at seeing that the men are reaching for opportunities more than women? We've got to get women to sit at the table. Message number 2, make your partner a real partner. I've become convinced that we've made more progress in the workforce than we have in the home. The data shows this very clearly. If a woman and a man work full-time and have a child, the woman does twice the amount of housework the man does, and the woman does 3 times the amount of child care the man does. So she's got 3 jobs or 2 jobs, and he's got 1. Who do you think drops out when someone needs to be home more? The causes of this are really complicated, and I don't have time to go into them, and I don't think Sunday football watching and general laziness is the cause. I think the cause is more complicated. I think as a society we put more pressure on our boys to succeed than we do on our girls. I know men that stay home and work in the home to support wives with careers, and it's hard. When I go to the mommy and me stuff and I see the father there, I notice that the other mommies don't play with him. And that's a problem, because we have to make it as important a job, because it's the hardest job in the world, to work inside the home for people of both genders if we're going to even things out and let women stay in the workforce. Studies show that households with equal earning and equal responsibility also have half the divorce rate. And if that wasn't good enough motivation for everyone out there, they also have more, how shall I say this on this stage? They know each other more in the biblical sense as well. Message number 3, don't leave before you leave. I think there's a really deep irony to the fact that actions women are taking, and I see this all the time, with the objective of staying in the workforce actually lead to their eventually leaving. Here's what happens. We're all busy, everyone's busy, a woman's busy, and she starts thinking about having a child. And from the moment she starts thinking about having a child, she starts thinking about making room for that child. How am I going to fit this into everything else I'm doing? And literally from that moment, she doesn't raise her hand anymore. She doesn't look for a promotion. She doesn't take on the new project. She doesn't say, me, I want to do that. She starts leaning back. The problem is that, let's say she got pregnant that day, 9 months of pregnancy, 3 months of maternity leave, 6 months to catch your breath. Fast forward 2 years, more often, and as I've seen it, women start thinking about this way earlier. When they get engaged, when they get married, when they start thinking about trying to have a child, which can take a long time. One woman came to see me about this, and I kind of looked at her, she looked a little young, and I said, so are you and your husband thinking about having a baby? And she said, oh no, I'm not married. She didn't even have a boyfriend. I said, you're thinking about this just way too early. But the point is that what happens once you start kind of quietly leaning back? Everyone who's been through this, and I'm here to tell you, once you have a child at home, your job better be really good to go back, because it's hard to leave that kid at home. Your job needs to be challenging. It needs to be rewarding. You need to feel like you're making a difference. And if 2 years ago, you didn't take a promotion and some guy next to you did, if 3 years ago you stopped looking for new opportunities, you're going to be bored because you should have kept your foot on the gas pedal. Don't leave before you leave. Stay in. Keep your foot on the gas pedal until the very day you need to leave to take a break for a child, and then make your decisions. Don't make decisions too far in advance, particularly ones you're not even conscious you're making. My generation, really sadly, is not going to change the numbers at the top. They're just not moving. We are not going to get to, we're 50% of the population. In my generation, there will not be 50% of people at the top of any industry. But I'm hopeful that future generations can. I think a world that was run where half of our countries and half of our companies were run by women would be a better world. And it's not just because people would know where the women's bathrooms are, even though that would be very helpful. I think it would be a better world. I have 2 children. I have a 5-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. I want my son to have a choice to contribute fully in the workforce or at home, and I want my daughter to have the choice to not just succeed, but to be liked for her accomplishments. Thank you.
Just basically something real quick that I'm just throwing in here. She's gonna say it in a video, but basically she says, "Don't leave before you leave," and she breaks down, why women gradually drop out of the workforce in anticipation of children they may someday bear. Right? Make your partner a real partner. This is what she's saying. So she's advocating make the husband, but think about it, make your husband a real partner. Like, make him do it. Make him decide to not pursue his career, not pursue his dreams. Make him take a lesser paying job. Make him stay at home and watch the children or pick up more of the slack at home so that you can go out and be the man. This is the solution to the feminist problem of not enough female CEOs, not enough female in Congress or in politics, right? So she says everyone should encourage men. So not only does she want women to do that to their husbands, but she wants society. And this is the funny thing: leftists, feminists, atheists always say that everything is a social construct, but what they're ignoring is nature and biology and chemistry and things that just happen naturally, right? So, but what they're doing is a social construct. They're trying to redefine roles and positions. They're trying to get people and encourage people to let go of what they naturally feel inclined to do. But it said make your partner a real partner. She says everyone should encourage men to lean in at home. So women lean in at work, men lean in at home. This is a hilarious thing, the dynamics between the black feminists and the white feminists. Black feminism, some of them are on this boat and on this nonsense, but some of them have enough common sense to know that that's not working in the black community. The black matriarchy, they know they will not respect any black men that do not perform or not make any money. So you would think the black feminists would say to the white feminists, like, no, we don't want our husbands staying at home watching the kids. We want them to work and provide. But they're not saying that because they're silly and they're going along with this nonsense. But you would think that the community, the what's going on in the community would outweigh what this white feminist is saying, because it's not going to work for the black community at all. It's not working now. But basically, everyone should encourage men to lean in at home and being equal partners in parenting and in housework. Lean in is a large for women who are looking to climb the corporate ladder, and Sandberg calls a jungle gym. But anyways, that's just something I wanted to put in there real quick. She basically is trying to tell, of course, for women to be captain, save the planet, or do what they're trying to do, they meet these quotas. Even though females naturally have no desire to do these things, you got to get everybody to change their roles, change their positions, and get women to do something that they're not interested in doing. Because if they were, it wouldn't be so difficult. Women would just go flock to these jobs, these careers, and say, forget having a husband, forget having kids. I want to make all this money, have more degrees than a thermometer, and then when I'm 50 or 60, I'll go adopt a bunch of kids to try to fill that void. Because, marriage is pretty much out of the question at this time in my life. But I don't know.